Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor to present here at the EMI Conference 2025 in this beautiful city of Anaheim, California. I sincerely thank my advisor, Professor Omar Nofel, for his invaluable guidance throughout my research. I appreciate the opportunity to share my work with such a distinguished audience, and I look forward to meaningful discussion. Thank you for your attention. In our community, the built environment tells a story of lives shaped by structures, of families sheltered through storms, and of dreams built on the foundation of safety and resilience. Our research demonstrates the importance of understanding the diversity of building archetypes and their vulnerabilities, enabling us to better prepare and protect our neighborhood from flood risk. But beyond the data and models lies a deeper truth. Behind every building is a life that matters, children playing, elders resting, family hoping for a safer tomorrow. This is why our work is not just about engineering or statistics, it's about people's life and futures. We I highlighted how the resolution of our flood modeling significantly influences the results of flood risk analysis. Higher resolution models capture finer details in topography and water flow, leading to more accurate identification of flood-prone areas. Conversely, lower resolution models may oversimplify the landscape, potentially underestimating or overestimating risk. By understanding this impact, we can better tailor flood mitigation management plans to the specific characteristics of the area, ensuring effective resource allocation and protection for vulnerability communities. It presents the introduction to our study on flood risk analysis. It outlines the motivation and context of our research, emphasizing the increasing efficiency and also impact of floods due to climate change and urbanization. This sets the stage for understanding why our focus on modeling resolution is important, as it directly affects the reliability and usefulness of flood risk predictions. We selected Lumberton, North Carolina as our study area due to its history of severe flooding and its vulnerability to hurricane impacts. The image shows significant flooding caused by Hurricane Matthew, showing highest rainfall event which overwhelmed local infrastructure. These factors make Lumberton a critical and representative location to study the flood risk and validate our modeling approach. For context, Lumberton is a city of approximately 21,000 residents, emphasizing the need for effective flood risk management in moderately populated area. This slide summarizes the extensive impacts of Hurricane Matthew in North Carolina, emphasizing its severity and widespread damage. 100 floodplain year with some areas experiencing 1,000-year flood events. Nearly 110,000 structures were damaged or destroyed, and FEMA reports that 71,000 households sought assistance with damages in nearly 79,000, totaling at least 777 million US dollars, including over 400 US dollars uninsured loss. So the hardest hit areas, including the counties like Robeson and cities such as Lumberton, approximately 3,744 people evacuated to 109 shelters, as well as transportation was heavily impacted with 635 roads were closed in the major highways around like 140 west and 195 north or south. Over 714,000 households lost powers mainly due to the downed trees and damaged transformers. The slide illustrates the comprehensive framework we use for flooding damage analysis. So the workflow starts with the data preparation where hazard maps or building archetypes, cost ratios, and shape files are loaded and processed. This includes the extracting of building characteristics and flood depths to prepare the spatial datasets. Next, the fragility and loss curves are calculated and visualized for building different groups using statistical model like log normal distribution. Damage state mapping assigns damage probabilities to each building's types, which enables the estimation of losses by groups. The loss analysis section generates the detailed statistics and 3D visualization of damage probabilities and financial impacts. And the final steps involve creating clear visual outputs such as bar charts and shapefile exports for spatial analysis. Now, as we go through the methodology, we followed the flood risk and damage assessment in North Carolina, Lumberton. First, we collected the hazard data, building archetypes, information, and flood depth maps from various reliable sources. We then applied the fragility curves to estimate the probability of different damage states for each building type based on the flood depth. Next, we calculated this Next, we can combine these damage probabilities with loss ratios to calculate the expected financial loss for each building groups, and we use the spatial analysis to map damage distribution and generate loss estimates across the study area. And finally, the results were visualized through charts and maps to support interpretation and decision making. So from this spatial distribution and mapped community that we did on ArcGIS, we can observe that the darker portion of the area has been flooded under and the buildings were under the flood. And these buildings has been shown in a different colors which are near to the flood zone areas has been colored in a different aspects, and also the lighter color has been shown like there are less floods zones, and which is indicated by the mark darker to lighter. So the darker it is the depth of the flood in that certain zone area. This slide focuses on the diversity of building archetypes, essentially different types of buildings we considered in our flood damage analysis, and how these are grouped into what we call loss groups 1 and 2. Building archetypes are represented models of common building types found in the study area. So the reason why we are grouping them is because to analyze every single building individually, that would be too complex and computationally expensive. So we group similar building types into categories called loss groups. Each group shares the similar vulnerability and expected flood damage behavior. So the table shows how different building types represented by archetype indexes are group based on their vulnerability and loss potential. And the importance behind this is different building groups types react differently to flood waters. For instance, a small wooden houses which is considered as a F1 archetype will suffer different damage than the brick commercial building which is archetype F8. So by grouping different buildings with similar damage profiles, we can calculate expected flood losses more accurately and efficiently. This slide shows the house different building archetypes are models and in group 3 and group 4, and this is shows about the building archetypes for group 5. So as we discussing about the damage state, we can identify that there are 4 different damage states, which are damage state 1, damage state 2, damage state 3, and damage state 4. So damage state 3 first is considered as a slight damage, and damage state 2 is considered as a moderate, damage state 3 is extensive, and damage state 4 is a complete damage occurring to a certain area and certain prone zones of the buildings. So here are the different archetypes for group 1. So this slide represents the uh, archetype 1 to 5 for group 1, in which we can see that the damage state 1 has been represented in blue, damage state 2 has been represented in orange, and damage state 3 has been represented in yellow, and 4 has been represented in purple. So this is the same for 5 to 10. So demonstrate group 1. So the group 1 has the 10 archetypes in this regards. Now we see the loss ratio versus flood depth for different archetypes for group 1 and group 2. As we can see that there are 10 different building archetypes in group 1, and group 2 seems to be have like 7 building archetypes. So in case of group 3 and group 4, we can observe that the group 3 has like 4 archetypes and group 4 has like 3 archetypes, and group 5 has the combination of all total 15 building archetypes. So the probability of accidents and flood depth has been shown on the left side of the figure, in which the cyan color has been represented the damage state 1 and the red color has been represented by damage state 4. And in the right side of the figure we can see that the different blue dots which represent the random loss samples, while the black line shows the average loss estimates from method 1. So we use the different hazards loss curve to identify the building damage analysis. So in this slide we can observe that the number of buildings versus the damage state for group 1 and group 2 for in 2D. So as we can see that the damage state 2 has been higher in both group 1, group 2, group 3 and group 4. And in case of group 5, one of the interesting observation we can observe is that a relatively higher number of buildings show minor or no damage compared to other buildings. So this could be an area to explore further. Overall, this chart helps us to understand how damage is distributed and can guide us in prioritizing mitigation efforts for buildings that are more vulnerable. So this 3D probability analysis of archetypes of groups and depths, as we can observe, is like the y-axis shows the probability and the x-axis shows the different archetypes, and the z-axis shows the different depths of the buildings based on the different damage state 1, 2, 3 and 4. As we can observe in these 3D graphs, the same thing, and here the x-axis observes the damage state and y-axis observes the building groups, and the z-axis observes the different damage states of the building. So as we can observe from this flood loss comparison, as we can see that there are the total minimum loss for first archetype is 79.52 million, and in 15 archetypes, as we can observe, is 133.3 million. So we can observe from this is the for flood risk management and planning, using a higher number of architects provides a more realistic and reliable estimate of the potential losses. So we can conclude from this is the resolution of architect modeling dramatically shapes our flood loss estimates, and also the simplistic models with fewer archetypes tends to underestimate the true risk and potentially leaving the communities vulnerable. And also understanding the nuances is critical for planners, engineers and policymakers who rely on accurate risk assessment to predict lives and property. So why does this matter? Because it matters because the better model resolution means the better preparedness. So it allows us to identify the vulnerable building types and more precisely tailor flood mitigation efforts accordingly. With precise damage state probabilities and loss estimates, resources can be targeted efficiently, whether in flood defenses, insurance schemes, or emergency response planning. So the recommendations from our side is like to integrate the higher resolution archetype modeling into the regional and urban flood risk assessment to enhance the forecast reliability, and to utilize these advanced simulation to prioritize investment in infrastructure resilience, upgrade at-risk structures, and also refine evacuation strategies, and also to promote the collaboration among modelers, local authorities, and communities to convert intricate model findings into practical implementable solutions. So these are the references that we used for the purpose of our presentation. And last but not least, as we can move on forward, let us commit to building safer, smarter, and stronger communities. Let us utilize this knowledge to advocate for resilient infrastructure that respects the unique character of each neighborhood while safeguarding its residents. Together we can turn the tide on a flood risk and build a better future where everyone has a safer place to call home. Thank you for being a part of this journey towards resilience and hope.